I never asked to be born, but my parents, Wayne and Abigail Billy, made it painfully clear from the start that I wasn't planned. I'm Madison, the second child they didn't want. My older sister, Amber, was the golden child, the one they dreamed of. Growing up in the Billy house was like living in two separate worlds. Amber's world was full of love, attention, and celebration. Mine, a cold, shadowy place filled with indifference and barely concealed resentment. I still remember my 8th birthday as if it happened yesterday. I woke up hopeful, daring to believe this year might be different. Maybe this time they'd remember, maybe they'd care. But when I came downstairs, my parents were seated at the kitchen table, engrossed in a conversation about Amber's upcoming dance recital. "Morning," I said, trying to keep the hope from my voice. Mom looked up briefly, her expression blank. "Oh, Madison, your cereal's in the cupboard." That was it. No happy birthday, no hug, nothing. Later that evening, at dinner, Dad finally remembered. "Oh, right. Happy birthday, kid," he muttered, not even bothering to look up from his plate. Mom blinked in surprise. "Is that today? I thought it was next week." That night, I lay in bed clutching the only birthday card I received, a small note from Grandma Francesca. Her words were like a lifeline. "My dearest Madison, happy birthday, sweetheart. You bring so much joy to my life. Never forget how special and loved you are. Love always, Grandma." I read the card over and over, desperately trying to believe her words. But how could I feel special when my own parents barely acknowledged my existence? School wasn't much better. Parent-teacher conferences were an endless cycle of disappointment. Other kids' parents showed up, proud and supportive. Mine always had an excuse. "Sorry, Madison," Mom would say, her voice devoid of remorse. "Amber has a dance competition that day. You understand, right?" I'd nod, pretending it didn't hurt, but it always did. The worst moments came late at night when they thought I couldn't hear. Their voices would drift up the stairs, sharp and cruel. "I just don't get it," Dad said one evening. "Amber's so bright and talented. Why can't Madison be more like her?" Mom sighed heavily. "I know, it's like she doesn't even try. Remember how Amber was reading at 4? Madison could barely tie her shoes at that age." Their words carved deep scars into me, each one a reminder that I'd never be good enough. I became quiet and withdrawn, retreating into myself because, really, what was the point of trying? The only person who truly saw me was Grandma Francesca. Every visit to her cozy little house felt like stepping into a different world, a world where I was loved and heard, a world where I could just be. When I was 13, I hit my breaking point. Home had become unbearable, and I knew I couldn't stay. One day, tears streaming down my face, I went to Grandma. "Grandma," I whispered, my voice trembling, can I live with you?" Her answer was immediate, her embrace warm and unwavering. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, pulling me close, "you'll always have a home with me, and one day, everything I have will be yours." I melted into her arms, feeling safe for the first time in years. I didn't care about inheriting anything, I just wanted to feel loved. When my parents found out, their reactions were predictably indifferent. "That tiny house?" Dad scoffed. "She works at a library for peanuts. What could she possibly offer you?" Mom just shrugged, relief evident in her voice. "Well, if that's what you want, it'll make things easier for us." Their apathy stung, but it also reassured me that I was making the right choice. They didn't value Grandma's love, but I did. Living with Grandma wasn't easy, money was tight, and we often struggled to make ends meet, but none of that mattered. For the first time, I felt cherished. Grandma attended every school event, always sitting in the front row, cheering me on. My drawings covered her fridge, and she'd proudly tell everyone about her brilliant granddaughter. Under her care, I began to thrive. The shy, quiet girl I had been slowly disappeared. I made friends, joined clubs, and my grades improved. Love and support had transformed me. Everything seemed to be falling into place, until one crisp autumn afternoon when Grandma came home looking unusually emotional. Her smile was there, but her eyes brimmed with tears. "Madison, sweetheart," she said, her voice trembling, "we need to talk. It's about my sister, Marilyn. She passed away." I barely remembered Aunt Marilyn, a wealthy and distant businesswoman. "I'm so sorry, Grandma," I said, taking her hand. She squeezed it tightly. "There's more, Madison. Marilyn, she left me everything, her entire fortune. We're millionaires now, sweetheart, multimillionaires." The news spread quickly. It didn't take long for my parents to reappear, knocking on our door one evening. When Grandma opened it, there they stood, Wayne and Abigail Billy, their eyes shiny with tears. Francesca, Madison, Mom said, her voice trembling in a way I'd never heard before. We've made a terrible mistake. Dad nodded, looking unusually humble. We've been awful parents, truly awful, but we've realized how wrong we were, and we want to make things right. I stood frozen. The same people who had ignored me for years were now pleading for a second chance. Please, Madison, Mom said, her voice trembling as she reached out to me. Come home. Let us be the family we should have been all along. I turned to Grandma, my heart heavy with uncertainty. She gave me a kind, reassuring smile. It's your decision, sweetheart, she said softly. Whatever you choose, I'll support you. After days of agonizing over it, I decided to give them another chance. With Grandma's blessing, I packed my things and returned to the Billy house. At first, it felt like a dream come true. Mom and Dad were attentive and loving, coming to every school event and cheering me on. They gave me thoughtful gifts, not expensive, but ones that showed they were paying attention to what I liked. We even started having family game nights. I'll never forget the first time Dad ruffled my hair after I won at Monopoly, saying, "That's my girl." The warmth that spread through me was indescribable. The biggest surprise was bedtime. Mom began tucking me in every night, something I'd always dreamed of as a little girl. She'd smooth my hair and kiss my forehead. "Good night, sweetheart," she'd whisper. "We love you so much." Even Amber seemed different. She included me in her plans, introduced me to her friends, and gave me advice about boys and makeup. I wanted so badly to believe it was real, that my family had truly changed and finally saw me for who I was. But a tiny voice in the back of my mind whispered doubts. Why now? Why only after Grandma came into money? I pushed those thoughts aside, determined to enjoy the loving family life I'd always dreamed of. I called Grandma often, excitedly sharing how happy I was. She always sounded glad for me, but there was a hint of caution in her voice. "Just remember, Madison," she'd say gently, "you always have a home with me, no matter what." Life settled into a new routine. Amber, always the golden child, graduated high school with honors and went off to a prestigious college. Grandma moved into a beautiful new house, finally retiring from her job at the library. And me? I was thriving, doing well in school, with close friends, and even dating Caleb, a boy from my chemistry class. One Thursday evening, I had a date with Caleb at the local diner. I spent hours getting ready, changing outfits and redoing my makeup, feeling nervous but excited. But as I sat waiting at the diner, my phone buzzed. "Sorry, Madison, something came up, can't make it tonight." Disappointment sank in, and I left the diner early, heading home. The house was quiet when I arrived, so I used my key to avoid waking anyone. As I walked past Dad's study, I heard voices. I was about to announce my return when Mom's voice stopped me cold. "I don't know how much longer I can keep up this act," she said, her tone sharp with frustration. "I never wanted her in the first place, and pretending to love her is exhausting." I froze, my heart hammering. Pretending to love me? Dad's response turned my stomach. "We just have to be patient. Once Mom passes, all the money will go to Madison. If we play our cards right, we can convince her to share it with us. Just think of the life we could have." Their words shattered me. Every moment of love and acceptance had been a lie, a calculated performance for Grandma's fortune. Tears welled up as the truth sunk in, crushing the fragile hope I'd been clinging to. I took out my phone and hit record, unable to stop myself from capturing their betrayal. When I couldn't bear to listen any longer, I walked back to the front door, took a deep breath, and slammed it loudly. "I'm home," I called out, forcing my voice to sound steady. Mom and Dad appeared almost instantly, their faces plastered with smiles and fake concern. "Madison, sweetie, you're back early," Mom said, her brow furrowed in what I now recognized as insincere worry. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I muttered. "Caleb canceled. Something came up." Their reactions were perfect, too perfect. Mom clicked her tongue sympathetically, and Dad gave me a reassuring pat on the shoulder. I had to fight the urge to recoil from his touch. That night, I lay awake for hours, their cruel words replaying in my mind. By morning, I had made my decision. After they left the house, I packed a duffel bag with my clothes and a few meaningful keepsakes. Without looking back, I left the Billy house and went straight to Grandma's. When she opened the door and saw me standing there with my bag, her eyes widened. "Madison, what's wrong, sweetheart?" I couldn't hold it in any longer. Tears poured down my face as I pulled out my phone and played the recording. As Grandma listened, her expression shifted: shock, disbelief, and finally, a deep, simmering anger. "Those conniving, heartless," she stopped herself, taking a deep breath before looking at me with soft, loving eyes. "Don't you worry, honey, we'll give them a surprise they'll never forget." She pulled me into a tight hug, and for the first time since hearing that awful conversation, I felt safe. That evening, my phone buzzed incessantly, calls and messages from Mom, Dad, and even Amber. At first, I ignored them, but eventually, I answered. "Hello," I said, my voice cold. "Madison," Mom's frantic voice came through. "Where are you? We've been so worried." I almost laughed at the irony. "I'm with Grandma," I replied calmly, "and we'd like to invite you all over tomorrow for a family conversation." There was a long silence before Mom stammered. "Of course, we'll be there, Madison. Honey, whatever's wrong, we'll fix it." I hung up before she could continue. Fix it? They had no idea what was coming. The next evening, the air was heavy with tension as the doorbell rang. Grandma gave my hand a reassuring squeeze before answering. Wayne and Abigail Billy stepped inside, their faces full of fake concern and affection. "Madison, sweetheart," Mom began, reaching out to me. I stepped back, watching confusion flicker across her face. Grandma's voice was calm but firm. "Please, have a seat. We have a lot to discuss." As they sat down, Dad's eyes darted around, taking in the signs of wealth. "Mom, what's this about? Is everything okay?" Without a word, I placed my phone on the table and pressed play. Their voices filled the room, cold, calculating, and damning. The effect was immediate. The color drained from their faces as they sat, wide-eyed and speechless. When the recording ended, the silence was deafening. Then they both began speaking at once, their voices a jumble of excuses and apologies. Grandma raised her hand, silencing them. When she spoke, her voice trembled with disappointment and barely controlled anger. "I hoped, truly believed, that you had changed," she said, her words deliberate and heavy. The realization was a tidal wave, washing over my parents as Grandma delivered her verdict. "I had considered dividing my estate among all of you," she said, her voice unwavering, "but now I see clearly, everything I have will go to Madison, alone." Their faces fell, struck by the full weight of her words. Panic flickered in their eyes as the reality of their failed scheme set in. It wasn't just the money they'd lost, but also any chance of being part of a family grounded in love and trust. "Please, you have to understand," Mom's voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. "We made mistakes, but we love Madison. We can fix this." She reached out, desperation etched into every word. When begging failed to soften Grandma's resolve, their tone turned venomous. Dad's face twisted with fury. "You can't do this. We're her parents, we have rights. We'll make sure you never see her again, Francesca." Their threats didn't faze me. For the first time, I felt a calm certainty about what I needed to do. "I'm filing for emancipation," I said, my voice steady. "Grandma will be my legal guardian. You won't have any control over me anymore." The shock on their faces would have been almost comical if it weren't so tragic. They looked between me and Grandma, realization dawning that their carefully laid plans had not just crumbled, they had completely backfired. "I think it's time for you to leave," Grandma said firmly, her tone brooking no argument. She stood and gestured toward the door. After a moment of hesitation, they left, their defeat palpable. When the door closed behind them, I released a shaky breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Grandma enveloped me in a warm hug, and for the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of peace. The weeks following the confrontation were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. Grandma hired the best lawyers to help secure my emancipation and transfer guardianship to her. I had naively believed my parents would step aside once their deceit was exposed. I was wrong. Wayne and Abigail fought bitterly to retain control, clinging to the hope of accessing Grandma's wealth. But the evidence against them was overwhelming. Years of neglect and emotional abuse became the foundation of our case. Teachers from my schools testified about their absence, how they never came to parent-teacher conferences or attended my school events. My third-grade teacher, Mrs. Randy, recounted the time I won the spelling bee and no one from my family showed up to celebrate. Even neighbors came forward, painting a stark contrast between the extravagant parties my sister Amber enjoyed and my overlooked birthdays. The final hearing came quickly. To my surprise, Amber walked into the courtroom, slipping quietly into the back. When she took the stand, her testimony dismantled the last remnants of my parents' defense. "Yes, Your Honor," Amber said, her voice calm and deliberate. "I knew about my parents' plan to use Madison to gain access to Grandma's money. The sudden kindness, the sisterly bonding, it was all part of the act. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. I sat frozen, struggling to process her words. She met my gaze briefly, and for a moment, I thought I saw regret in her eyes. But it was too late. Her admission was the final blow, severing any hope of reconciliation. The judge's decision was swift and unequivocal. Grandma was granted full guardianship, and I was emancipated from Wayne and Abigail Billy. As we left the courthouse, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. For the first time in my life, I was free. The mansion I now called home became more than just a physical refuge, it was a sanctuary where I could heal and rebuild. Grandma's love was a constant, her encouragement a beacon as I navigated my new life. I poured myself into my studies, no longer burdened by the need to prove my worth to indifferent parents. For the first time, I was living for myself. Grandma supported me in every way she could, offering opportunities one had only dreamed of. But it was her unwavering belief in me that truly changed my life. "You can be anything you want to be, Madison," she'd say, her eyes sparkling with pride. "The world is yours." Together, we traveled the globe. In England, I fell in love with art and architecture. On a safari in Africa, I discovered a passion for wildlife photography. Each experience unearthed new facets of myself, helping me grow into the person I was always meant to be. But the most transformative work happened in the quiet office of Dr. Lucas, my therapist. Twice a week, I unpacked years of pain and learned to navigate my emotions. "It's okay to be angry," she told me once. "It's okay to grieve the family you should have had." Slowly, I began to trust again, not just others, but myself. The night before my high school graduation, Grandma and I sat on the patio, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. She reached over and took my hand, her expression tender. "I'm so proud of you, Madison. You've been through so much, and look at you now, you're stronger and more beautiful than ever." Tears welled in my eyes, but this time, they were tears of joy. "I couldn't have done it without you, Grandma. You saved me." She shook her head with a gentle smile. "No, sweetheart. You saved yourself. I just gave you the space to do it." The next day, as I stood on the stage accepting my diploma, I heard Grandma's cheers above everyone else's. A wave of peace washed over me. My past no longer defined me. Instead, it had forged me into someone stronger, ready to embrace the future. Looking out at the crowd, my eyes met Grandma's. In that moment, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I wouldn't face them alone.